The corrections I'd make to the history books is to let the Indians tell it. We should all be able to tell our own story.
What it means to be an American is freedom.
I don't believe the American dream.
I think it is hard to be an Asian in America today.
Your Fellow Americans is a project asking questions about race, immigration, and the American dream. We're just trying to figure out what it means to be American for as many different folks as possible.
Hello, I'm Gaylene Crouser, the Executive Director at the Kansas City Indian Center. The Indian Center serves hundreds of people every month, but mostly we just like to go out and let people know that we're still here. Yeah.
Gaylene Crouser is Lakota Indian. In September of 2014, we joined Gaylene's family at the home of her parents, Robert and Patti Nelson, to learn about their views on race, immigration, and the American dream, and to see how those views are impacted by their Lakota Indian culture.
Culture is very changing, but the thing with the way of life of the Lakota people is it's not changing. A lot of the very fundamental parts of being Lakota should be just a very stable thing, and that's interwoven through your whole day.
Our culture hasn't lost their way. They treat each other a certain way. They pray a certain way.
Indian people have always been very spiritual people. In fact, that's where the word Indian came from, was it meant indios. We're what we were called by people that came here, and that means of God. We were praying people. One thing that I would want everybody to know, and not just for Lakota people, but for all Indian people and people generally speaking, not one of us can sit here and speak on behalf of any one tribe. I can't even sit here and speak on behalf of this family. Even though I'm Lakota, and we did live in teepees, there were so many other styles of homes that people lived in that were appropriate for their area, because that's how they lived. Indian people, indigenous people, lived with the earth. We weren't the savage people that were made out to be in the movies or in history books, because if that was the case, then nobody would have survived. Columbus would have been massacred, the people on Plymouth Rock would have been massacred, Lewis and Clark never would have made it to the West Coast. But we're not that way. We've always been very welcoming people and very generous people, because we see other human beings. And it struck me as odd when people weren't generous with their relatives, because our family always was.
I remember growing up and always being around family, whether we was staying at like a grandparent's house or an aunt or an uncle would come to our house for stay however long they needed to stay, and always more than welcome. Always food on the table, always taking care of each other.
We take care of each other. We had food. When somebody come to visit, we offered them food, even if it was just a little bit. You know, if they needed help with something, then you tried to find a way to help them. The Lakota had a way of life in this country, forever. What I would like people to know is that we aren't any different. We don't all run around with feathers and hatchets. We're not all screaming savages. We are people, just like all other people, just a difference in skin tone. That we would welcome anybody who had a question. I wish they would come and talk to us and get to know us and find out that we have things in common with them too that would be beneficial to all man.
That's what the people called themselves, but they call themselves that because that's the way of life they had lived. Lakota means friendly way of life. Do I identify myself like that? Someday I'd like to, you know? Someday I'd like to get that, get that good, I'd like for all of us to get that good.
Because I want to live Indian, and I want to die Indian. And that's a way of thinking And that's a way of being. And that's a way of prayer and life, and the way that you treat our mother, the earth, and the Creator, and your relatives. It's about being a good relative.
Maybe all races could finally be friendly toward each other, and we can all call each other brother and sister Lakota.
For Gaylene's family, being Lakota is a way of life that they wish others would ask them about. Yet the majority of Americans feel uncomfortable because of our country's tense history with Indian peoples. What do you wish you could ask them? Comment below or visit kcpt.org/yourfellowamericans.